Hello and welcome to the Infinity Saga and beyond. We are here today talking some Venom The Last Dance, the final film of the Venom trilogy. My name is Ron, and joining me to get into the symbiosis of all this today is Chris. Chris, what's up, man?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I've eaten a lot of junk food, a little stress eating. Venom would approve. A little bit of chocolate in there.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a pretty crazy time right now, but thankfully, we've got a little something
A
to take
movie
our
to talk
minds off
about.
of all
Yeah.
that today. Yeah, we've got a fun movie to talk about, one that the reviews have been a little mixed on for sure, and we'll get into all that good stuff. But this is the second of three videos that we have coming out on the channel this week. Jordan and Casey's Agatha All Along finale coverage is up now, so go check that out. Depending on when this releases, I'm not sure if it'll be already out, but if not, it'll be out in the next day or two. We have our superhero suits draft with our buddy MT from Heavy Spoilers and Guardians of the Galaxy. We all did that a few weeks ago, and we kind of waited a little bit to drop it, but it was super fun. One of my personal favorite episodes that we've all done together. So be on the lookout for that as well. But
Yeah, that was fun.
yes, but as I mentioned, today we are talking Venom, and I guess we'll just kind of jump right in with our initial thoughts because this movie, for me, it was one that was a bit of a roller coaster journey in the build up to it. A couple months ago when they dropped that first trailer with the little tease of Null in it, and it was, oh my god, Null's coming to the Sony Marvel verse, and it was, oh my gosh, is this third Venom movie the capper of the trilogy? Is it going to be King in Black? Is it going to be this major big event film? And there was all this hype going into it, and then the early reviews came out, and it was not that at all. It was very much a movie that was sort of in lockstep with the first two in terms of the tone and the serious, or I should say, not so serious. Tone. The way that the movie's presented, it's very goofy. It doesn't really feel like it has too much gravitas to it. We know that Null wasn't in it quite as much, and we found all this stuff out from these early reviews. And after the kind of being bummed wore off of, okay, I guess this isn't really the Null movie we thought it was going to be. It sort of tempered my expectations going in, and I know that was kind of the case with you as well. And because of that, though, I went in with a totally different mindset of what to expect. And by the time I left the theater, I found myself, walking out with a smile. I really enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun. It wasn't perfect. This isn't a movie that's going to win awards or anything like that. But I respect that they stuck to their guns and what the first two movies did.
Yep.
And we had a great time. So we'll get more into some specifics here. But all in all, I'm glad I saw it, and I'll probably see it again. What do you think, Chris?
I'm in a very similar boat. Just about everything you said, I'm in a very similar way of thinking. I didn't have any expectations for this film, and it very much helped it. To be honest with you, this is a film series that I don't dislike, I don't love. It's just, it's there, and it's just such an unoffensive superhero like trilogy. It's like, it's a good time, it's a good watch, but it's not something that I'm like clamoring for. So I walked into the theater very low expectations, saw some of the reviews, and we kind of got the null hypothesis busted. So, it was a interesting. I came into this with such low expectations,
Mhm.
and I had fun. I thought it was a fun movie. I thought honestly, I cracked up. I was in a theater with only like six people in it, and I feel like I was the only one laughing, but I cracked up like the whole movie. Like it was just I for whatever reason, this turn of Venom, I think they got the balance just right, and I think Tom Hardy, it's just well performed, and just fun. I love that you said, yeah, it's not going to win awards. It's not going to, it's not a film bro movie. It's
Mhm,
a movie that's going to be made fun of by a large sect of the people on Twitter that overanalyze everything.
mhm.
But but like, this is the perfect movie when you're not in the mood for anything, and you're having a drink after a long weekend and a
Mhm.
long week or whatever, and you just need something to. It's that kind of movie, and we need those kind of movies. And
Yeah.
after seeing Joker, Folly Ado, it wasn't hard to like beat the bar for me.
Yeah.
I just wanted fun. I was just like, can I have a comic book movie that just gives me fun?
Mhm. And
So
we
I
and we
got
got it. It was a popcorn movie through and through, as they say. It was you used the term very inoffensive, and I think that's probably a good way to put it too. Like it's not it doesn't have the gravitas, it doesn't have the weight of like when you see like a No Way Home or something like that,
yeah,
where
it's not groundbreaking.
you're going into a legit experience. This was not that at all. But despite that, it did a pretty good job of being what it was intended to be, even despite and this was something that I didn't even like think of until recently when I was just kind of preparing my notes for this. This was a movie that was largely produced and shot during the strikes. So this is a movie that, basically had a ton of shit working against it to begin with. And I wonder how much of that played into what the original plan was for the movie. If
Hmm.
this was maybe intended to be more of a larger scale, more involvement from Null kind of thing. And then, by the time that they got there, and, they basically didn't know what was going to be going on the next day in terms of these strikes and all that stuff. I don't want to say you just kind of had to slap something together, but kind of just had to slap it together and do the best you could.
Well, give this movie some credit. Of the Sony movies in this vein, of the Sony Spider-Man movies without Spider-Man, this might be the best one.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yep.
you could argue any of the Venom movies in any order that you want. I think you could legitimately do that. But like, to me, this movie knew what it wanted to do and it just did it. I thought, you know, a lot of times you have side characters like that family going to Area 51, and it's just stupid and it's just there to like keep the story together. It was completely, they were plot characters. That's all
Mhm.
they were. But they were awesome.
They were.
Like I just like they understood the assignment. Like everyone in this movie understood the assignment and like just fully committed to it. And I feel like a lot of times when these movies don't work out, cough cough, Madam Web, like nobody's on board. Like you can tell nobody. It's not a passion project.
Mhm.
Nobody cares. This was a true blue comic book movie that wanted to do exactly what it did. I've always thought Venom should be a little darker, a little more serious, a little less silly, because it's a like symbiote that eats.
Yeah.
But it the
It's almost like
concept is ridiculous.
they had to, knowing that Venom was going to be portrayed as the protagonist in this movie, in these
Yep.
movies, I should say, the whole trilogy.
Yeah.
You almost had to go the goofy route because if he was just this, darker,
It just want to be
kind of more
fun.
yeah,
Yeah.
it would be like Joker in the Venom verse. Like, you know what I mean?
Oh
It
my
would
god.
yeah, it would almost be a little too much for for him to be the protagonist, which is interesting because it feels like they're kind of going that route with this Craven movie we've got coming out next month, where it is going to be a little darker and more mature in tone and sort
Hmm.
of a more ruthless protagonist. So I'm interested to see what they do with that. But yeah, I think they definitely the the comedy throughout this whole trilogy was very much an intentional choice
Hmm.
to sell toys at the end of the day. You know what I mean? To make it so that he
Uh,
could be a hero
it's
that's
a kid friendly
time.
franchise.
Yeah.
It's a kid. We need kid friendly franchises. Like I know the Snyder Bros hate it, but we need a kid friendly franchise for superheroes. And Spider Man in general, like the whole world that he opens up is supposed to be fun and like exciting and like bright and colorful in the first place. So
Mhm.
it's like, I mean, if you want dark storytelling, there's so many avenues for you.
Yeah.
I so I wasn't saying that in the sense that like it's wrong. I just sometimes there's a juxtaposition of when I think of Venom, and then when I think of these movies.
Yeah,
But Tom Hardy, a perfect performance of this. I think this very comfortable in the role. I think the voice worked the best for me.
yeah.
Um, I I I have really I have so little complaints about this movie. Like inoffensive is really the word I'm going to go with because I don't have a single complaint. I really don't. The I was ready for more. He's like done with Venom, and he's like, "Where are you, buddy?" And I'm like, "Oh man, come on!"
Well, luckily, not. Well, yeah, as we said, we're just going to kind of bounce around here. We're not going to get too bogged down in the okay, this
Right.
happens and that happens and this. So we'll go to the post credits there, as you mentioned, about where are you going, buddy? Are you still here? But it seems, even though this movie was called The Last Dance and that's how it was marketed, when you look at those two post credit scenes of Null not succeeding the first time, obviously, to get out of this Clintar prison that he has been entrapped in by his symbiote children. And then we get the other one of the sort of broken vial next to the cockroach. Earlier in the movie, they make the joke about cockroaches; they survive everything. So they're very much leading us to believe that even though this was quote unquote the last dance, aka the last chance to boost the box office. That's what I like to refer to it as, because I think that's all it was. We are
Yeah.
definitely going to see him again. Uh, you can't do a Null movie without Eddie Brock Venom. You can't do
Right.
it.
It's like the thing. So
But then again, I struggle to say that because there's been a lot of things that Sony has done that beforehand I would say you can't do that, and then they go and do it anyway. So who knows? We don't want to give them too much credit, I guess. But
look, Sony's lucky I watched this movie. If we're being honest, after
yeah,
you had "Don't Make a Scene" in Madam Web, and they're dancing on the table in the diner singing "Toxic" by Britney Spears, I'm just like, come on. Um, I said after that movie they weren't getting another dime, and they got another dime. So, I'm a sucker, but at least they gave me a good time this one.
yeah,
I I really enjoyed this movie though. I had fun. I might see it again.
yeah.
It was I thought the action in this one was really well done.
Mm-hmm.
It felt a little bit early 2000s superhero movie, but it looked like a 2024 film. And that I think is the make or break. When you were talking about those post credit scenes though, you know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of like a better DCEU movie where the post
Mm-hmm.
credit scene isn't going to lead to a damn thing, but it
Yeah,
could.
yeah,
But it could. Like, so they kind of, it's like the perfect post credit scene because all of that stuff could set up something or it could not. And nobody's going to care in a couple years.
yeah, yeah. That's the whether you can call it fortunate or unfortunate part of it. It's like Sony doesn't. They have such a small. Let me think how to put it. Like there's such a small amount of universal faith around anything they do right now in this universe that it's like you almost kind of expect nothing to come to fruition from anything. That it's almost like, if we get it, cool, but if we don't, that's Sony. It's like
Yeah.
they boxed themselves into being so bad that we just kind of like anytime that they're not the worst, it's like, oh, okay, cool. But.
Yeah. Well, it's almost like Sony said the CW is not doing superhero shows anymore. Okay, hold my beer. Um, and, um, of course I'm an Arrowverse fan, but like, come on, it's the quality of some of this Sony stuff has just been just dreadful.
Yeah.
So like expectations versus like the best thing I will say about this movie is expectations versus reward.
Mm-hmm.
You're getting much more than you expected out of it. Um, but I almost don't want to talk this movie up because I think that's part of why we enjoyed it so much because we
Mm-hmm.
didn't expect anything. I honestly, I thought the scene with him rescuing the dogs in the beginning and the joke with him losing the shoe and then the boots and it was just perfect, dude. Like it was so choreographed, nothing was forced in this movie. Like I
I
feel like
think
Venom forces a lot, and this movie didn't really force anything.
I think that scene that you referenced to is a great microcosm, not just for this movie, but the Venom trilogy as a whole. What is a very serious, dire kind of life or death situation that Eddie finds himself in. You know, these gangsters holding him at gunpoint, but they make it kind of funny and a little goofy. And, they're like sitting there having back and forth banter while he's got, 5 guns trained on him. And it was something that I understand people who might not, that might not be their jam, whatever. But for me, and it seems like for you too, it kind of worked in
Yeah.
this universe.
The one thing I don't really like is the we are Venom. We no no
Yeah,
no. It's
yeah,
we
it's a little
are
much.
like at this point. Like that's a great scene for the first movie.
Yeah,
At this point, you should be good at that.
yeah. Especially because
Um,
they made a like a point in this movie to emphasize, like, this is the first of the first 2 movies. He doesn't open up the first movie with Venom, obviously, but it's a struggle to kind of bond and form that symbiosis between them in the first movie, and they end up doing it at the end. But then in the second one, they kind of regress a little bit, and they're arguing. Eddie and the symbiote are arguing, and they end up splitting and going their separate ways and all that stuff. But then when we open with this movie, they are in perfect, again, not to, no pun intended, in perfect symbiosis. They are in lockstep with each other. They are good. They have a great relationship. So I felt like it was weird to have them still have, that sort of miscommunication on the introduction. Like it felt a little out of place. I will say that.
yeah, 100%, 100%. But also the timeline didn't make sense to me. I was like,
Yeah.
is it really that little time as Venom? But there's 3 movies.
Yeah. They said a
It
year,
seemed
right?
like it was a forced decision.
Mhm.
I just said they didn't force anything, but I feel like that
Yeah.
was structurally built in before the movie. So it's like, yeah,
Yeah. Well, it's also kind of weird, and who knows, because there's the whole and I guess we'll just kind of get into this side of it now, that time that he was in the MCU, and like who knows what, like, I mean, they got to put it, if the time that he spent in the MCU was like more time, and it like brought him back at a later time. They're very vague about it, but the year thing that they mentioned is the first time that we've actually gotten some point of reference of like how long this has taken place over. And I didn't mind that they only did a year, just because it sort of keeps them beholden to less continuity. Whereas, like, oh, okay, if they were together for 5 years, it's like, where was he during this? Where was he during that movie? What was he doing here? Whereas it's like with this, it's like, yeah, you have seen the whole journey of him and Venom together, with no off-screen stuff or nothing like that. So it was I kind of like that they went with the shorter time frame with that. I think it just makes it a little bit cleaner. But as I was mentioning the going into the different universes thing, one of the big talking points from this movie was that symbiote scene that we got at the end of No Way Home, where the piece of symbiote stays in the MCU while he gets shunted back into his universe. And so when I saw the movie, and we see that the symbiote is actually in the Sony verse, and what's the character's name? Strickland, who's played by, God, I'm going to mess his name up. I got it written down here. Hold on. Chiwetel Ejiofor. I definitely butchered that, but you know him from Doctor Strange and all that stuff too. Baron Mordo. He's a great actor. But when he, kind of puts the vial down in the symbiote, it's in the Sonyverse. So when I saw that, I in my head was like, okay, they're retconning it. So that piece of symbiote that kind of flaked off of him is no longer in the MCU. It came off in the Sony universe, and that's what they took. But I've seen a few different review videos since then of people basically implying that that piece of Venom that Strickland got is still different from the MCU one that kind of came off the suit, and that one's still out there floating around in the MCU. And I think
it's
that's a little
vague.
confusing.
I think it's vague, and I think it's vague on purpose. I think it's just like the post-credit scene. It can lead to a lot of things, and it can lead to nothing that it's supposed to do. It open-endedness with Sony is really what you're going to get when you don't have a clear, defined path, and you can only play with certain tools in the shed. You're going to have that problem where you're just hoping you build it to what you want to build it to, and I don't mind that at all. I feel like if we get bonkered down on that, we're thinking about the movie too much. And if you think about this movie too much, it ruins the movie
Yeah.
because the whole point of this movie is you're not thinking. You're. It's a ride.
Yeah.
You're on the airplane with Eddie Brock. You're.
Mhm.
I told you we could fly.
And I will say, not to push back on your point because I do agree with you,
Yeah.
but I can understand the people, who would hear us say that and say, okay, but it feels like every other comic book movie we get these days is like that, and you think of like Ant-Man and kind of how that flopped a little bit. The Marvels, which is another one that we really liked, but felt more of a popcorn movie than one that's like, super high stakes, akin to those Infinity War / Avengers projects. So I can understand why, if that's not your cup of tea, but different strokes for different folks, I guess.
I understand, but to me, the Sonyverse that they got going on here is basically just a different flavor of a DCEU that died. Like this one's
Mhm.
gonna die too, and they're gonna
Yeah.
recourse because they're not making enough money, and they're like, oh well, we already planned these things, but if they slow down production, and some of these planned things stop happening, they
Mhm.
just start over, and or maybe they say we should just give Marvel what it wants and like work with them to make good movies, and then you know, so there's going to be a breaking point at some point. It's not going to be Morbin time forever.
No. And I think that this movie is going to be that breaking point because it did underperform at the box office.
Yeah,
I'm sure a lot of the initial reviews that were lukewarm to bad on it probably swayed that a lot. And Sony
Craven
is
needed this to be a hit.
very much so. I think Craven will be either the nail in the coffin or the saving grace, and I'm not thinking it's going to be the saving grace. I think it's going to be the nail in the coffin, but it puts Sony at a crossroads. And as you just mentioned, the smart move would be just let Marvel do it. Let Disney cut a deal, give them the rights to these characters. And I know it's easy for us to say sitting here, behind our
Hmm.
computer screens, we're not in these boardrooms making these deals and stuff. But how much damage can you do to your brand? And
Yeah,
we don't think this movie was damaging to their brand, but objectively, when you look at the reviews and the critic scores and the box office, it was another flop. So
no,
event like
It's the NFL trade deadline, Ron, and we have a bunch of teams that should sell but aren't selling because for some reason they think that it doesn't make any sense to get something out of like a 1 year rental for
mm,
a guy who's never going to come back. Right? Sony's
mm,
in that spot. Sony's in that spot. They're a bottom half team, and they don't have any reason to hold on to this thing the way they're holding on to it. They can restructure everything to a point where Marvel has more control and they get a fat paycheck.
mm,
I don't understand. Like, there's so many different ways you can do it. Like, I'm not a business guy, so like, I don't understand that side of things. I understand the creative side a little bit because I never stopped thinking about this stuff.
mm,
But like, I just feel like the fans at some point are going to say, "Could you just give us what we want? We'll
mm,
go to the movies if you give us what we want." And I don't think anyone in the world is going, "I need a Craven the Hunter movie without Spider-Man."
yeah.
Like, if you
Or
give me a
or
Spider-Man
any
movie
other
with
movie
Craven
that
the
they've
Hunter,
made, any other
right?
movie they've made in this universe that doesn't have a Spider-Man. It's just
I, and Venom's the outlier because Venom's
yeah.
actually their most successful like property
He's the only
right now.
character they have that is strong enough to stand on their own.
Yeah, I mean, look, I, I prefer them to go back to like Amazing Spider-Man with Andrew Garfield. If you're gonna, you've got that's the saddest thing is they have things they can do. They have things they can play with, and they're
Mhm.
like, no, we're doing this. We're doing this.
And the
It's stupid.
the crazy part about it is I can understand if they cut a deal with Marvel, it's not going to be, 50-50. It's going to be probably again, I'm not a businessman. I don't know what the figures would be, but ultimately it comes down to like which path do you want to go down? Because we have now numerous examples of them trying to do this on their own and make these movies without Spider-Man. And it's just been, with the exception of the first two Venom movies, in terms of box office, just flop after flop after flop. Not just in box office, but in quality, in reviews, in everything. Even if you kind of take an initial loss on that hit of like, okay, we're not going to make 100% of the profits from these movies if we give them to Marvel, but it's going to do so much for the brand long term and rebuilding people's confidence in it, because you can continue to reap 100% of the profits of all these movies that you want to make. Mm-hmm. But if each one's making less and less, eventually you're just going to run the thing into the ground.
Rod, say they get to a point where they make them with Marvel, and Marvel adds the things that the fans are going to want, put a little Spider-Man in there, and you get these movies averaging like $650 million. 40%, 50%, 60% of that, it's a pretty good chunk of money.
Yeah.
And especially it's a better chunk of money than what you're getting.
Yeah. Like when you
look, and it helps your reputation. So it's,
and honestly, if they go the route of giving or of negotiating a deal with Disney to allow them to be basically the main creative driving force behind them, it's probably going to be looking a little better than 650 million. I mean, every single time that they have done it so far, this is the craziest part about it. Not only do we have proof that they can't do it on their own, but we have proof that when they don't do it on their own and get help from Disney, like in the Homecoming trilogy, $1 billion, cranking out $1 billion+ movies. It's like, what? There's got to be something we're missing here, because otherwise,
and look, the Sony Spider-Man games are like crown jewels of like video game stuff. Like they can do so much with the property that they have. And I understand the Spider-Man thing got complicated with the deal with Marvel, and I understand that these are supposed to be without Spider-Man. I just wonder what we're doing here, but I don't want to really take it away from the movie, because the movie that we saw was good. We enjoyed the movie. I think the reason we got here is because it is absolutely pointless if they don't do anything with it, and there is reason to believe, because of its reviews and its financial outing, that it's not going to have anything come from it. And then what was the point other than giving us a good time, which I'm fine with. If a movie just gives me a good time, I'm honestly fine with it. To me, this is how I felt coming out of the theater. I keep bringing back the DCEU, and I'm sorry, it's my frame of reference, but this is how I felt coming out of Shazam: Fury of the Gods. I enjoyed the movie. Was it amazing? No. Was it a movie that anyone's going to talk about in the next 5 years? No. But I had
especially
a good time
not
that
now
day.
With Zachary Levi, but that's a different.
Well, let's. It's a good day not to talk about that. If you know this was recorded. Yeah. Oh, Jesus Christ.
So I guess we'll kind of pivot back to the movie a little bit.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
One character in particular that I really want to give a shout out to. The actress's name is Clark Backo. She played Dr. Sadie Christmas in this movie, who also ends up becoming Lasher. She was a character that I think stole the show in this movie. I thought she was amazing every time she was on screen. From that first scene we get her when they're like, "Oh, Dr. Christmas," and she like points to the Christmas tree in her chest. I was like, "Oh God, that's so lame and so corny and so on the nose." But like
it was perfect.
Every scene after that, like she just jumped off the screen, and I just wanted more and more of her. My only gripe was that we didn't get more of her. But I think just because this movie was almost a little Deadpool and Wolverine-ish, that won't be taken out of context at all, in the sense of the movie isn't, the movie is about the main character and their buddy, so to speak. It's not, a Thanos where the villain is the driving force of the movie.
It's a buddy cop movie.
Yeah.
It's a buddy cop movie without cops.
Yeah, where the focus is mostly on the main two. Like, there was a lot of things in this movie that were a little bit shortchanged in favor of showing more screen time with Eddie and Venom that I didn't really mind. That whole thing with Dr. Payne and her brother. Remember when she, in the beginning of the movie, they show, like, that was a little weird.
I gotta be honest with you. I would. I literally. I was in that scene. I'm like, what the fuck are we doing?
Yeah, yeah,
Like, I was just like, why are we doing this? Like, it just, I, like it just, I just did not care. Like, there was no
yeah.
reason to care. Like, I will, yeah. They're just in the sand, and like she's just screaming, and she wakes up, and I was like, oh, that trope's never been done before.
Yeah, and then they don't mention it at all for the rest of the movie until she kind of becomes one with the agony symbiote at the end, and she
Right,
gets
and
like,
it's supposed to mean something to you, but it barely
but it
does.
doesn't. It doesn't.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's not an earned moment, but
yeah.
yeah.
So they didn't really flesh out the side characters too much in this movie. Same thing with Strickland. Even he was, did good with what he was given, but he was kind of a very one notish, like, oh, I'm the tough, hard ass military guy, but at the end, I'm not anymore. Like it was, the focus wasn't on the ancillary characters or even the villain of the movie is technically just the xenophages, these nulls kind of creations, if you will, that are just here trying to get the codex. So there was no like there wasn't a lot of time for much of anything besides just what they wanted to focus on, which was the
Right.
Eddie and Venom dynamic. But with that said, just to kind of wrap up my original
Yeah.
point, I think despite the lack of focus for the side characters and the lack of development, I think that the actress who played Sadie Christmas was very, very good in this movie. And I would like to see her. She's never going to play that character again, but I would like to see her get a shot in some other superhero universe, whether it's another stab at Sony, although I doubt it. Maybe somewhere in the MCU, maybe even in the DCU. Who knows? But I thought she did a hell of a job, Clark Backo.
Yes, let's bring her to James Gunn. I like that idea. You know who the MVP of this film was? Mr.
Martin.
Martin Moon.
Martin.
Martin and
Alien
family.
invasion! Alien
Dude,
attack!
it was like it was like it was like Murray from Stranger Things meets Clark Griswold. It
Yeah,
was
that's
it
a good
was
combo.
so dude, it's so good. It's so good. Like I this is what I said when I was laughing the whole movie. I'm just like the Venom stuff, yeah, it gets me, but like this guy, and he's just like, yeah, brother. Like it's just so perfect. He's hilarious, and his kids, like his kids, like I don't want to meet an alien, and, and he's just like awkwardly sitting there, and it's just the dude. I did not have. I tweeted this out. I did not have Venom 3 having a better musical number than Joker Folie à Deux.
Mm.
But they did.
Which one are you
They did.
referring to the car singing scene or
Yeah,
the okay, yeah.
the car
Yeah, that was
singing
good.
thing.
It was good. So that
That
I
was
did enjoy. Wasn't so bullish on the Las Vegas Mrs. Chen whole dancing number. That was a little like, why is that
that
in this
was
movie?
yeah. Well, honestly, it's funny that you said that because I didn't remember until you said it. And I
Like,
think that's emblematic of your point.
yeah, it's one of those things where it's like you get what they were going for in this movie, and it's like Mrs. Chen has been around in the first two, so you had to find a way to get her back in there for the third one. But I just think if they had spent that time that the whole Las Vegas bit, really, I thought was very unnecessary, and that time could have been allocated to better fleshing out this sort of shadow government agency that's below Area 51 that's doing all this stuff.
Mhm.
And you could have fleshed out a lot of stuff more in this movie. The individual sort of side characters themselves. Maybe you could have even thrown a little more Null in there to make him feel more involved as opposed to just being essentially the bookend of the movie. So that one I wasn't too big on, but did love the car scene. Did love Martin as a whole. He's played by Reese Ifans, who is one of the rangiest actors, I think, in the game right now. When you look, he is also, I know you're not a big Game of Thrones guy, Chris, but he is Otto
I watched
Hightower.
I watched 5 seasons of Game of Thrones and I stopped caring.
There you go.
Um,
That's fine.
it's one of those things. I keep saying I'm going to go back to it, but
You should.
I probably will. But it'll probably be like some random night where I'm just like, here we go.
Well, you can watch me and Jordan's retrospective on Fantasy Folk to get you a nice little primer for it,
Uh,
not to cheap plug
oh,
our
I
other
was going
show.
to listen to that anyway. I mean, come on, it's
Hell
you
yeah.
two. I was going to listen to that anyway. Um, the Logjam does it better than anyway, but shameless self promotion too. But we do that
Listen to
better than anybody.
Elseworlds now, the most recent episode
Yeah.
of The Penguin.
If we ever talk about the Penguin again. Uh,
You guys will
we're a
get
little
there.
behind. We're a little behind. What a show, but that's not the show we're doing.
Yeah.
But
So
yeah,
Reese Ifans, yeah, he's Otto
good acting.
Hightower in House of the Dragon, who is this very sort of stoic, reserved, like sort of hand of the king leader type.
Mhm.
And then he's also Dr. Connors in No Way Home and Amazing Spider-Man. So just
Oh
seeing the
God, he is. Yeah,
yeah. So just the
I
range,
didn't even
like
click with me like that.
yeah,
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. Um, I've been the chocolate bar. Oh, a friend of mine really likes this, and
yeah.
then he's finally like in Vegas, and Venom's like, "You have a chocolate bar," and I've been doing that. Like every time I see chocolate, I'm like, "Chocolate!"
Halloween must have been a big day for you then.
Not really, to be honest with you. I turned the lights off and enjoyed the Batman.
There
Um,
you go.
my
October
neighborhood's
31st.
boring anyway, so
Yeah, yeah.
October 31st, the streets are crowded for the holiday.
So,
Oh
uh,
Jesus.
not
The rails are over here.
yeah. So there's not really too much to go into in terms of this movie. It was a very surface level thing, not didn't make you think too much, as we mentioned.
Venom was very self-sacrificing. I didn't see Venom with
Mm,
like this heartfelt win-loss kind of thing going. He's the only one who can handle this thing. He's engrossing the monster. He's
mm.
he's going under the acid. I did not have that on my bingo card to have the heartfelt moment, and then you have the montage where you're like, wait, was this more serious than I thought it was?
So that made me laugh. It was funny because it felt like they were going for something serious, but like half of the clips in that montage were just from this movie. So it felt like they were trying to give you this trip
You're
down
right.
memory lane, but 3/4 of it took place in the last 45 minutes. You're like,
Yeah.
okay.
They're like, we don't have access to all the footage, guys.
Yeah, we'll give you a couple bits from the first two. But yeah,
Yeah.
again, yeah, the editing department was a little behind, so we just kind of pieced some shit together.
Yeah. So here's the DVD.
Yeah. So, but
Scrap
it
what you
was,
can.
but the ending was kind of fitting though, because the whole Venom's kind of driving force in this movie is that he wanted to be that lethal protector, right? That he feels like he was sort of born to be. Again, not to make a Deadpool and Wolverine comparison and have everybody say, "Oh, this idiot compared fucking Venom to Deadpool and Wolverine," but very
I
much
mean, it is
almost
a stretch.
well, but just we're talking bare bones of like
No, I
what
get
was
exactly
what
what
was
you're going for.
Deadpool was like, I just want to matter. And it almost feels like Venom had a little bit of that kind of going on here too.
Well,
And it,
yeah, Venom had a complete story.
yeah.
To
And it
cut you
wasn't,
off like a rude guy.
no, you're good. You're good. It wasn't overly complicated either, right? The plot of this movie is basically, uh, there's the codex inside of Venom that was produced after Eddie died in the first movie, and Null needs that to get out of his prison. And it's basically a wild goose chase against Eddie and Venom to find it. You didn't have to go super crazy with it. You didn't have to get overly complicated. It's just very point A to point B, and it got you there, and it was an enjoyable ride. So all in all, I'll see it again. I enjoyed myself, and could I have asked for more from the movie? Absolutely. But just knowing that Sony's going to Sony most times, I think we made out pretty good.
I agree. I think if you're gonna nitpick, you could have said the military aspect fell flat, and I think there was a story there that they didn't quite hit on, and the realizing that they have to let the Venom symbiote out and all, the whole thing. You could have you could. There's a lot of stuff that's either unrewarded or kind of half baked. Like if you're gonna nitpick this movie, that's really where you're gonna go.
Mhm.
Um, and look, the cheesiness isn't for everybody. I enjoy cheesiness.
Yeah.
There's a level of cheese that's just like too much, and I feel like this stayed under it for the most part.
Mhm. Yeah, it very much did. It was, I guess, just the best way again to kind of sum it up and put a bow on it here is that it's a popcorn movie.
Uh-huh.
It's one that I will, when it comes back or when it comes on digital here, the first night it comes out, I'll probably make some popcorn and watch it again and have a good old time. You know, maybe smoke a funny cigarette or two, and just
Look. I'll watch this more than I watch like Thor: Love and Thunder.
yeah, or
You
like
know,
Joker 2 or like some or any of these other
I don't even
Sony
want to
movies.
hear the words Joker 2 ever again. And follow you, Duke, and follow you, fuck off. Um, I never even want to hear those words again. Now we have to make it explicit, so I'm sorry, but
No, it's okay. Oh, no, don't worry.
and
I was talking about smoking weed and I dropped a few fucks in there too. So we're good. We're good.
yeah,
But with that
um,
said, I think we could probably put a bow on Venom: The Last Dance here. Hopefully, it's not the last we see of the character. Again, you never
well,
really know with Sony. That's the funny part of it all. Um,
yep,
yeah. So coming up here on the channel, we're gonna have our what if coverage that Jordan's gonna be doing. I forget who his guest is for that, but they're always a great time. We got that coming down the pipe here on To the Infinity Saga and Beyond. Over on Pod Awakens, we've got Skeleton Crew kind of gearing up here, ready to go. The only Star Wars project for a very long time, so we're excited to get into that one and break it all down before what's going to be quite the little drought in Star Wars. But we'll find other ways to sort of bridge the gap and fill in that time before we get back into Mandalorian and Ahsoka goodness. Over on the fantasy folk, I mentioned, we just recently did our Game of Thrones retrospective. We also had our buddy TJ Fat Thor on for an episode before that recently, just talking some Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones. So we got a lot of good stuff going on there. And Chris, I will throw the floor to you to tell all the fine people what y'all got going on in Elseworlds.
yeah. The you see all that of the network, and then it's like my corner, my one little corner. No,
I wanted to get.
yeah,
I just wanted to get. I didn't want to keep
no,
having to
you're
go
good.
back and forth, so I was like,
I
let me
know.
get my
I'm
shit
just
out of the way.
yeah, I know. I'm joking. No, Elseworlds is having fun with Superman and Lois, the final season. So we're gonna have episode recaps for this past episode and the one before it. Eventually, we're gonna talk about the Penguin. I think we're gonna wait till the finale and just kind of do a deep dive into the series since we got a little behind on that. And we have more Smallville first watch updates from me. I'm on season 10, the last season, and we've gotten up to season 7. So I took a break like at season 8. Like I was like, all right, all the series regulars left. I'm not feeling the mojo. I found the mojo back with the show, and my first watch is almost over. So we're gonna get back to that. And we got some cool drafts coming up on the network. Elseworlds has a really cool one that I can, we did the suits thing. Yeah, I have to limit the number of Batman suits on my board. It's just this spoiler for what's coming. It's like I made a list. It's like, oh crap, these are all Batman suits. So um
Yeah, I guess we could just kind of drop that in as the last little bit of news. So we referenced that our Marvel superhero suits draft with MT is coming out later this week, or maybe already, depending on when this episode is out. And we've also got some plans to extend that over into the DC side. We're going to do our favorite DC superhero suits, and we're going to do our favorite Marvel and DC villain suits. This is sort of a draft series that we kind of cooked up,
mhm.
just dedicated solely towards the suits. So we've got a lot of really fun stuff coming down the pike here.
Honestly, we should like play like 10 seconds of like the suits theme song just as a joke, like in the beginning of it, be like, let's see if the copyright doesn't get us there. But
Oh, the show. I was like, what the hell are you talking about? Show suits.
Yeah,
Yeah. Sorry, I'm not firing
so
on all cylinders.
no, you're 100%. And you know what? The way I said it, yeah, it's big. But another, another cool thing you got to remember is the DCU is coming up. So Creature Commandos first DCU project in December. We're gonna have a lot more coverage of that because it's the kickoff of it's the nerd kickoff of DCU. Everybody else kicks off on Superman. It's the nerd
Superman is
kickoff.
The casuals kickoff. This is the real diehards kickoff.
Yeah. We're this this one's gonna be fun. If you've seen the trailer, it looks so Sean Gunn, so James Gunn, but Sean Gunn too. But we're gonna have a lot of fun with that, and the news is just gonna start coming. We're gonna get more casting. We're gonna get so while we're kind of going at a slower pace with Elseworlds because of craziness of schedules and all this stuff, it's gonna heat up. So laser vision's coming. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah. And honestly, with the probably with the exception of Pod Awakens, the same can be said for all of the shows on Logjam. We've got a bunch of really turn of the year 2025. From then on, it's basically all systems go on all the shows. So there's going to be no shortage of content coming out from the Logjam brand. And
look, 2025 couldn't be more fun. Yeah. You look at what Marvel and DC have going on for just Marvel and DC alone, 2025. That's going to be so much fun.
It's going to be something. It's going to be something.
Yeah, you could almost say it's a brave new world or something.
Hey. All right, we'll get you all out of here now. You can follow us on the socials at TO Infinity Saga, Twitter, Instagram, Threads, TikTok, all that good stuff. Check us out. You're already watching us on the YouTube channel, so no need to plug that. But please subscribe if you haven't. It's a very small thing, but it helps us out a lot, and we would be very appreciative if you would. So with that said, thank you all. Excuse me. Wow, kind of stumbled into the ending there. Thank you all so much for hanging out with me and Chris tonight and talking some Venom: The Last Dance, and we will catch you next time.